It's great to see everybody here this morning. And you know what? I'm going to quickly just say a few words about Bruce. And as I will get him to share, oh, Stuart, you handle that because I'm messing up the screen here. Yeah. Sorry about that. Bruce, we've known Bruce now for many years. We've been involved, Stuart and I have been involved in real estate since 2010 when we retired from governments. For those of you that are young, kudos for you. We started at retirement. That's when we started. So kudos for you that are young and just jumping in and getting stuff done. You're going to get so much information from Bruce today. We've known him since we actually started in real estate as well. And we've done few things together, which has been wonderful. Love having him when he gets in on a speaker because it'll blow your mind, which is part of the title of what he's going to do today, as to what he does. And I love it. He is one of the guys that has probably the longest CV you've ever seen, but in the shortest form possible. And that's what I love. It's kind of like a quick Twitter type of CV. And I'll even just kind of look at it and tell you, Bruce is an entrepreneur, a real estate broker and developer, and a coach. He's an urban guru. And just so you know, urban guru, he's got a PhD in urban development. He's an engineer. He's got all kinds of accolades somewhere in there. He's a keynote speaker. He's the Sens founder for all you hockey fans. He's a novelist. He's a blogger. He's a peerless husband and dad. And it just encompasses everything he does. But I mean, you'd have volumes for each one of those sections. So I am so happy to bring Bruce on today and be able to share with all of us. Thank you, Bruce.
Well, this is great to be here. And, you know, I'm friends with Denise and Stuart, but I have a lot of respect for what they do. They've helped me personally. I'll say that. Do you mind if I share my screen now, Denise?
Go for it.
Yep.
All right. Hang on a sec.
You'll notice who gave the permission this time.
Yeah, I saw that. So I just wanted to say for a moment, a couple of words about our hosts today, Denise and Stuart. And even before I say that, now, I think everybody knows where the chat box is, obviously. I think most of you guys have found it. So if you have any questions, you know, some people like to just be uninterrupted for an hour and a half, but I would prefer to make this a bit of a conversation. So if you have any questions whatsoever, just type them into the chat box, and either Denise or Stuart will just put up their hand at the, you know, when there's a little bit of a break and say, hey, Bruce, we got a question from, you know, Rebecca or Nick or whoever it might be. All right. So just feel free to interrupt. You know, if we were in a classroom together, which I used to do, as Denise and Stuart used to do as well, you can have a lot more interaction. So this is the best I think we can do today on Zoom. All right. So a little bit about Denise and Stuart. They are people who've helped me understand the power of, for example, RRSP mortgages to help with real estate financing. And, you know, I'm going to talk today, as you know, the title of this is Real Estate Business Models That'll Blow Your Mind. You know, obviously I'm going to spend over an hour doing that. But you know, an idea is great. I'm all for having ideas. I like ideas. You know, it's exciting to have new ideas. But without the ability to execute, they're really not worth very much. The only thing that we're sure of in the universe that is infinite, maybe the universe isn't infinite, we don't really know, but what we do know is that ideas are infinite. That is a true story, a true statement, that ideas are infinite. So ideas are very useful, but they're abundant, so it makes them relatively cheap. Even though maybe you guys feel, I got an idea that nobody's ever tried before. Maybe they never tried it before because it was a bad idea. But I can tell you from lots of experience, now I'm 69, so I'll be 70 later this year, from lots of experience, that even if you think you have the best idea, you know, ever, somebody else is probably thinking about it. Right? Somebody else might have tried it. So ideas are important, but not enough. Execution counts. And when it comes to financing real estate deals, that's really where a lot of the execution is. And Denise and Stuart have made me aware of RRSP mortgage financing, how to do it and how to use it, which I've done in my own projects. All right, so what are we going to do today? Real estate models that will blow your mind. You heard a little bit more about me. I'm a dad of 5 kids, and I've got 4 grandkids, and I'm sure at least I hope I'll have a bunch more. And I'm going to tell you a little story. There's a lot of young people on the call here, and some of you may have heard me tell the story before, so I apologize. But I was living in Australia for many years, and I think the year was 1982 or 83. I was in Australia getting my PhD in urban economics from the Australian National University in Canberra. And, you know, my wife and I were married. We had one kid, then later on we'd have more, but we were living in Canberra. And my dad came to visit me, right? He wanted to see his grandson, his first grandchild, and it was nice to have him there. But he told me, Bruce, my real estate business isn't doing very well back in Ottawa. I said, what's happened? Because my dad was a smart guy. He was a professor of economics and, you know, worked for the civil service, but also, you know, had his own hand in real estate. He was a pretty good real estate investor, but he said he was having some trouble. Could I come back just for 6 months? Now, that was 1983, and here I am in Ottawa almost 40 years later. So when I came back to Ottawa, I found that my dad and I think 3 partners had invested in 6 friggin' roller disco rinks. I didn't even know what roller disco was. I don't know if we had roller disco or disco music in Australia. I don't remember. I don't think we had disco music. Anyway, Donna Summer would play. So I didn't know anything about roller disco. So I went to the roller disco, one of the 6 huge warehouses that had been turned into roller disco rinks, a special purpose built actually for roller disco. And I put on my roller skates and I skate around in one direction. Then the music stops, you know, Donna Summer stops singing and everybody stops, so I stop. And then they start the music up, you go in the other direction. So after about an hour of that, I thought, oh my gosh, this is really bad. And so I took my roller skates off, gave them back to the rental place. And the next day I called up my dad's 3 partners and I said to them, guys, look, I don't really know much about the roller disco business. I know a little bit about the real estate business. I was probably 27 or 28. And I said, why don't we do a trade? You know, you keep all of the roller disco business, the operating business, and we'll keep the half of the real estate that you guys own. So we'll trade, right? And they said, oh, Bruce, you're a young guy. You don't know what you're doing. You know, the roller disco business is a cash cow. Real estate's, you know, kind of old and tired business model. You don't make a whole lot of money doing that. And I said, oh, it's okay with me. You keep the cow, and I'll keep the real estate. And they made that deal. Well, 18 months later, that fad died. I mean, when I said it died, man, it was dead on arrival 18 months later. And you couldn't pay a teenager to go there. You couldn't. So it was completely, they went bankrupt. So then I had 6 of these giant, like 45,000 square foot, almost, well, they were an acre under one roof, you know, with 18 or 20 foot ceilings, basically a warehouse with beautiful floors, mind you, and completely empty. So there we had 6 buildings that we owned 100% of, completely empty. And this was the beginning of the tech boom in Ottawa. Mitel was getting going, and some of the other companies you may have heard of were really going, great guns, Northern Telecom back in that era. And so within a few months, I had leased all of these warehouses to these tech companies, right? Because there was another thing that was going on in the 80s. It was called management by wandering around. The theory, and I think it's still a good theory today, that the most important meetings you're going to have are the ones where you just walk into a colleague or bump into a colleague at the water fountain, at the photocopier, say, hey, oh, I meant to ask you this. Those can be very creative. You know, people say that the importance of a meeting or the IQ in a meeting goes down inversely proportional to the number of people in the meeting. Right, so often these chance meetings are very, very, very important. So we filled up all 6 of these roller disco rinks with these wonderful tech companies. And whether you buy a duplex, a triplex, any kind of investment property, if you could drive the income up, which I was able to do, value usually goes up, even in residential real estate. Even if you just have a duplex and you know, you've done well on the leasing side, you drive the income up, generally speaking, you'll get higher valuations. And that's what happened. And so about 2 years later, I was able to refinance these 6 buildings and pull out about $5 or $6 million in tax-free cash. And I was young, I didn't know anything about accounting. I said, it can't possibly be tax-free, but it's just a loan. So all of a sudden we had $5 or $6 million of cash on the balance sheet. And I thought, oh, gee, I could probably do something with this. And so that company, which was very small when I took it over, about 9 years later was had about 120 million a year in earnings. All right, so even in unsuccessful situations like the roller disco business, I did learn something. First of all, I learned that that was a terrible business model. And the reason it's a terrible business model, in my opinion, is that a roller disco rink, it means you have to sell tickets, right? And so you open the door, you don't know how many people are going to come. You have no CMRR. If you can, maybe if you don't learn anything else today, I want you to remember this acronym. Can you see my, Stuart, can you see my cursor moving around? Okay, just give me the thumbs up. Okay, so you can see it here on the screen. CMRR stands for Committed Monthly Recurring Revenues, the holy grail of business. I'm not kidding. And so when I got a chance to design this arena where the Ottawa Senators play, the Canadian Tire Centre was originally called the Palladium. You can see I put some arrows here or some lines here that show 3 rings of suites. So these are private suites at 3 levels in the Canadian Tire Centre. And there were about 144 of them when we first built this building. And we leased them for 10 years, so 10-year term at $150,000 average, right? Which when you multiply all those numbers out gives you committed recurring revenues of $216 million. So even before we had to sell one ticket, think about that, we had enough secured income from companies like the Royal Bank of Canada, Bell Canada, which have a better credit history than probably you or I. You know, we had $216 million of committed revenues. That is a really important thing. And you say, well, is that relevant to most of us if we have a 10-plex? Sure it is. Committed monthly recurring revenue is just your rent and whatever other revenues you can come up with. Very, very important to look at that in every model. Just before I go on to this one here, going back to the committed monthly recurring revenues, one of the things that I would like to teach you guys today, and I'm sure most of you know it, is do not buy a property that doesn't cash flow. Just have the discipline not to do that, okay, guys? Thank you, Denise, for that little black-eyed peas thing. You know, I just don't think we should be buying on the assumption that there's somebody dumber than us who will buy it for more next year. That to me is not a good plan. It won't bring you to the promised land, which is a real estate portfolio that's performing well and providing you with enough money so that you're not eating cat food when you're 69 like me. All right, so here's so I wanted to go from you know, stuff that I've done to stuff that I'm doing more recently, which is how to get a home for free. And usually this gets a little bit of attention. How do you get a home for free, even in a hot market? And so I'm going to show you. And for Rebecca, Jordan, because I could see you guys on the screen, you know, this is something that, you know, you and I have been talking about, because I do a little bit of coaching with Rebecca and Jordan, you know, that your next home could be something like this. So this is what I did, you know, my wife and I, and we just closed on this, Denise and Stuart, yesterday. Right? And something I'm going to share with everybody, from now on, I am going to put in all my agreements of purchase and sale, not just for me, but for all the people I deal with in coaching as a real estate broker. I'm going to put in a new clause that the buyer has the right to extend the completion date by 2 business days. And the reason I'm going to do that is, holy smokes, folks, it is hard to get transactions closed today. Lawyers are struggling, you know, mortgage underwriters are struggling with volumes, and also people not being able to respond very quickly. So I'm going to put in a 48-hour or 2 business day extension in my agreements, because it was wild getting it closed yesterday. But anyway, we closed on it with 3 minutes to spare. So I want to avoid that kind of stress in the future. So this is a home in Belleville. It's not actually on W Street. I just kind of invented that. And we closed on it yesterday. And what you're looking at is a 5-bedroom home in the best part. I think it is the best neighborhood in Belleville. And I see Nick Foley on the call here. Nick, if you don't mind putting in the chat box, is Old Eastville one of the best neighborhoods in Belleville? Because that's where we bought. But you'll notice it's not far. Oh, he says it's the best. Good. I feel better now. Thanks, Nick. I love it there. Thank you. So we bought the cheapest house in the best neighborhood, which is clue number 1. Clue number 2 is it's next to an office building, and it's not that far from a major street. So that's kind of a bit of a downer for a lot of people. Then what's interesting about this property is it has a 5-bedroom home in front and a 2-bedroom home in back. Like that. So it's called a back-to-back condition. You know, a double is side by side, a duplex is one on top of the other, a back-to-back is what you see here. So it's got two homes. One of them is a 2-bedroom, one is a 5-bedroom, and they're back-to-back. They share one common wall that way. But then when we went into the backyard, we saw this little leprechaun. Can you see the little leprechaun here? We found him on the in the backyard, hiding in this detached garage, right? And he had a little pot of gold. And I look inside, and I'm going to be honest with you guys, I didn't actually look inside. My wife was there with our project coordinator and some other people. I was on Zoom. I couldn't get there to do the inspection myself. So I looked in on Zoom, but they were actually on site. And we found this little leprechaun waving high, like you see him here on the screen. That's the picture we took of him, and saying, you just found a pot of gold. And just above the leprechaun, you'll see how to animate. This is kind of my thing, all right? When I got into the coaching business after I retired from the University of Ottawa, I wanted to do real estate investment and business coaching, not really being sure if anybody wanted any coaching, but hoping that maybe they would, and turned out some did. And I didn't think I can contribute very much when it came to real estate investment. In terms of, maybe reducing costs. There are a lot of people out there, property managers, who are really good at looking at how to, shave a little bit off of your monthly costs. And that's very important to control costs, but I'm not very good at that. And I didn't think I could contribute much. So what I decided to do was to focus on the other side, which is the animation process. Now, not Disney animation, but how to add new revenue streams to existing property. So when you hear me talk about animation, that's what I'm referring to. And this little detached garage is a dandy little building built in the 1930s, and it's really structurally sound. And the roof is decent, even if it looks a little bit awful in this picture. It's actually pretty good. And what we're going to do is we're going to, now that we own it, we're going to extend this building over here a little bit where my cursor is moving around, and we're going to end up with a 2-bedroom Airbnb in the backyard. Now, Belleville happens to be 5 minutes from Prince Edward County. And Prince Edward County in Ontario is wine country. And Airbnbs in Belleville are ridiculously expensive. My wife and I, when we go there, she goes more often than I do because she's the project manager of some buildings that we own there. But they're ridiculously expensive. A 2-bedroom Airbnb can be, depending on which season, can be $200 a night or $400 a night. That's why this is a significant change in this building. Now, how did we get it $15,000 under asking when they were asking, I think they were asking about $500,000 for it, when almost every building in this neighborhood that Nick confirmed is a very good neighborhood was going about anywhere from $96,000 to even more over ask. And we got this for $15,000 under asking in a very hot market. And why did we get it so inexpensively? And I'm not going to go through all the details. It's too much for this session. I want to get to some other things, not just talk about Belleville. But the most important thing was our realtor, who was from Toronto, his name is Viraj Tanna, is like a super agent. He's like James Bond or something like that without the gun. And he discovered by talking to the sellers and their agent that the sellers, who were two investors, hadn't been paying much attention to this property, but they were very, very close to their tenants, and they did not want to offer vacant possession. They did not want to kick. I think their tenants have been there for 5 or 8 years, something like that, and they pay very, very low rents. And so everybody else who put in an offer, some of them were quite a bit higher than ours, put in that, well, we need vacant possession. We're going to renovate and kick the tenants out, renovate and increase the rents. We said, not at all. We're happy to accept the existing tenancies and the existing rents, and we'll do our best with them. And so understanding the motivation of a seller, right, Rebecca, is very important. You're going through that right now. All right, so we put in our offer, we accept the tenancies, and we put in a very short irrevocable, I think it was maybe 18 hours, and they accepted our offer, and we're glad that they did. Just to show you what happened is, I didn't expect this. I thought the building, once we do this little bit of animation in the backyard, will probably go from being worth about $485,000 to about 700,000. So that's a good appreciation and will produce real cash flow. I mean, imagine if you get $300 a night and you do 20 nights out of that detached garage. That's an extra $6,000 a month, guys, right? So this will really cash flow. But this surprised me. The insurance valuation came back at 995,000. You can see that on the screen. I kind of put an arrow here. When I saw that, you know, I didn't want to show anybody because it just seemed ridiculous. But there you go. All right. So why is it a free home? Why is it a free home? And I'll tell you why. Because something I teach is you should treat even your principal residence as if it was a rental. So here in Ottawa, I have a home here with a really nice studio apartment in the basement, which produces income. Unfortunately, it doesn't produce any income today because my youngest son broke up with his girlfriend and moved back in. So we don't get any rent from our principal residence. But to use Robert Kiyosaki's term, you know, he thinks of your principal residence as if it was a liability. Because in his terms, and I think he's right, if something sucks money out of your jeans when you're not working or when you're broke or whatever, that is a liability, right? Just that's the way he calls it. And I think he's right. So I treat even my principal residence as if it was a rental. And we have a studio apartment here. And I hope one day my youngest son will find another girlfriend and maybe move out. And then we'll rent it. And so Dawn and I, we've done the numbers. If we decide to move to Belleville to retire, you know, I'm the kind of guy who will retire about 5 years after I die. But if I ever do get the chance to move to Belleville, you know, we could live in this house, in the 5-bedroom house in the front, very nice if we wanted to at some point. And we would live for free because the 2-bedroom home and the 2-bedroom Airbnb will certainly pay all of the costs and then a little bit more. So it is kind of like a free home. All right. Now, I told you guys not to buy anything that doesn't cash flow. And then I bought something that doesn't cash flow. So you're going to accuse me of being a hypocrite and you're going to sign off right now. And I'll just be talking to Denise and Stuart for the next 45 minutes. But I hope you don't. And here's why. The cap rate on it currently is 3.3%. Even at this very low price, we were lucky to get it, frankly. So the cap rate you can see here, cap rate, is, everybody knows, is basically your return on investment, right? It's as if you didn't need a mortgage. I'm making about 3% on my money, a little over 3%. And I teach everybody, don't buy anything unless you can get at least 6%. And I didn't follow my own advice. And here's why. Because you know, I put in very, very low numbers for the Airbnb. So you could see the numbers here. I put in $170 per night for the Airbnb. And I think we're going to do considerably better than that. But even at $170 per night for at 60% occupancy, the cap rate is going to be about 7.3%, which is above my 6%. And I wouldn't be surprised if it reaches 8 or 9%. It might even get to double digits, but I'm not sure about that. And then on this spreadsheet, and again, I'm not going to go through all my spreadsheets. We'll be here till this time tomorrow morning. The net operating income, even if Dawn and I do move into this and we get zero rent from ourselves, it will be about $35,000 a year. So from the Airbnb and from the 2-bedroom home, we'll get about $35,000 a year. And that's enough to pay all your costs and a bit more, right? So it is kind of like a free home. I'm going to send this slide deck to Denise and Stuart. So if you're interested in any of my my spreadsheets, Denise, I'm going to make sure you have those links. Okay, so if you wanted to download those spreadsheets and play with them yourself, you might as well. All right, so I'm going to go in I'm going to show you some other business models. You know, most people tell me, oh, commercial, I can't do commercial. No, that's not for me. I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to rent it out. I'm going to get a 3.5% cap rate. Yes, I know I'm losing money every month, but that's the only model I know. That is not the only real estate business model. Okay, guys, it is not. And I'm going to show you this one. One of the things I've been experimenting with lots of my clients in Canada and the United States is things that cater to the gig economy. I'll bet you everybody on this call pretty much has a side gig, a side hustle, right? I do. It's my coaching. I like doing that. And I write books too, but the amount of money I make from my books it's a hobby, not a business. But the coaching is a real business. So that's kind of my side hustle. And I like doing it. And the number of people today, I think we had 8 million Canadians on the CERB benefit, the Canadian Emergency Response benefit, and about 30 million Americans or more on extended employment insurance, or whatever they call it. And many of those, I think millions of them, have started gigs, have started side hustles. And I think that's the smart thing to do. So I wanted to show you how we take advantage of that and how you could do it too. This is a client of mine, excuse me, in Kitchener-Waterloo. I think this is actually Waterloo. And he was looking at buying this 80,000 square foot industrial building. It's a very substandard building, and it had been on the market, and Waterloo is a very hot real estate, but it had been on the market forever, like, I don't know, 400 days or something like that. Nobody wanted. His first name is Shaddy, and so I call this the Shaddilac model. I just like his name, so I call it Shaddilac. And it's a riff on Cadillac. I hope he doesn't get sued. And so what I said to him is, you know, why don't you buy this thing? Because it won't be very expensive. When I show you, I think I have the price in here that he paid for it. When you buy this thing, we'll turn it into a bunch of mini workshops, you know, 400 square feet, 800 square feet, 1,200 square feet, 1,500 square feet. I think you'll do really, really well with that. And I'll show you the building. So here's the inside of the building, and this is why the building didn't sell. It only has 11'2" ceiling height, so from slab to the underside of the trusses here, it is only 11'2". And in industrial, the big guys, you know, like Amazon and Wayfair, they want at least, you know, 24, 30, 40 feet. In fact, the Amazon million square foot Amazon warehouse that was built in Ottawa recently is 60 feet. And I've heard Wayfair is thinking about building 90-foot clear, right? That's incredible. So there's no way that a big industrial company is going to come along and rent 80,000 square feet of substandard 11'2" ceiling height industrial space, and then make it even worse. It's long and skinny. They prefer square. It's long and skinny, and it has all of these columns in it, right? These posts in it. So you can't really, you know, it's not very efficient, right? So there's no way. So Shaddy said, why would I buy it? It'll just sit there empty. I said, I don't think so. We have a business model and it'll work because we've been experimenting with it. So Shaddy did some sketching of how he would divide up this space. And then I think a week after he bought it, there he was with his crew in there putting in these micro workshops. And he, as fast as he could build them, he could rent them. So here are some of the numbers. He bought this building for $1.2 million. That's 80,000 square feet. That's $15 a square foot. As I said on here, you can't build a doghouse for $15 a square foot. It's about 40. And then he put in about another $880,000 for these little workshops, and he had some engineering costs and other soft costs. And so he ended up with about $2.2 or $2.3 million invested in this business. But I didn't, again, I don't really like showing the slide because his cap rate is insane. You know how I hope to get a 7, maybe 8% cap rate on my W Street investment in Belleville. Imagine, you know, this is ridiculous. And one of the things I think you do know is whether it's a triplex or a 10plex, you know, income is important, as I said when we started. And you look at what is the fair market value cap rate that applies to this kind of industry in this kind of location. We used 8.5%. So you know, if you remember your algebra, this is a reciprocal calculation. It means you take the net operating income and you divide it by the fair market value cap rate. He could get a value on this property, we think, anywhere from 10 to 15 million bucks. And he's got about 2 or 2.3 million invested in it. That is life-changing, right? It's just like what happened to me all those years ago with those 6 warehouses. I really didn't know what I was doing. I mean, it was mostly luck, but I know what I'm doing today, and so does Shaddy. So if he were to get a 65% loan to value mortgage, which is pretty typical in the commercial space, it's not 80% or 95%, unfortunately, it's only 65%, he could still pull out possibly as much as $7 million of tax-free cash. And then he can rinse and repeat, and I'm sure he will. He's a young man and he's really smart. Okay, so what do I teach? You know, everybody on the call knows what the BRRR thing is, but I don't teach BRRR, I teach BARF. And BARF is buy, animate, which is with a business model, right? That's what Shaddy did with these micro workshops. Buy, animate, rehab, renovate, rent, reappraise, refinance, rinse and repeat with other people's money financing methodology, BARF. Okay, and that's what I teach. So if you come to me and say, hey, I want to learn how to flip houses, you need another coach. All right, so these are some of the workshops that you might see here. And by the way, we've been experimenting with this model for, like I said, I think 6 or 7 years. And I've got one of these buildings myself now, which Denise and Stuart helped me with. And if it was 10 times the size, it would all be rented. I wish it was 10 times the size. So it's been a really, really good model. And I'm having so much fun with it because guess what? I get to coach a lot of these clients. So I view my tenants as my clients. You know, a lot of landlords and property managers, when they get a call from a tenant, they go, oh, damn, another call, you know, from a tenant. To heck with him, you know, I want to go out there and ride in my Maserati, you know, instead of worrying about ants marching through the guy's kitchen. But I don't view tenants that way. They pay my bills. They pay my salary, so to speak. And you know, and then I provide coaching, which is a value-added service. I mean, I'm coaching a lot of the people who are in my buildings. I like doing it. It's fun for me anyway. I hope for them too. So I wanted to show you that this model could work not just because you bought an 80,000 square foot building. This model could work in your backyard of a home. You're allowed to build storage buildings, you know, with a building permit or a workshop in most cities and towns. I've got clients in Long Beach, California, who are doing this, and they build these really nice 700 or 800 square foot workshops in their backyards, right, with permission of the municipality. And if you have a tenant and a workshop, I want you guys to think about this. If you have a tenant in a workshop, you know, using Robert Kiyosaki's terms, you know, the apartment is a liability because he or she has to pay for that. And the workshop that they're renting in your backyard is an asset. And when I found when you have a tenant who has a place to live and a place to work, and they're like on the same site, perhaps, that tenant will be there for a long, long time. Right. And, you know, one of these buildings can be a tremendous, tremendous asset to whoever you rent to. All right, enough of that. I want to show you another building that's very nondescript. It's in a small town in Quebec called Gatineau. It's at this location. It's got a bunch of apartments here. And one of my former students, here he is, Eric Rossman. I took this picture. So this is a picture of me taking a picture of Eric taking a picture on the roof of his building. So this is Eric Rossman. He's a wonderful architect. I used to teach architecture at the Carleton University School of Architecture and Urbanism. And we were up on the roof looking at the area. And so he asked me, you know, hey, Bruce, you know, you talk a lot about animation. This is a few years ago now. What can I do to improve this apartment building? And there wasn't really much I could add. You know, there were a few little things I suggested. But as we were walking out, I said to Eric, Eric, what the heck is this? He said, oh, that's just a basement. Well, let's go look. And there's the overhead door. So we walk down here, and Eric opens this up, and there's that leprechaun again. He showed up a few years ago now, and this building has 10 basement with 10-foot clear ceiling height, built out of concrete and steel. It's unbelievable. And I said, Eric, we just found the gold mine. He said, what? I said, what you could do is you could divide this up into some maker spaces. And I see on the chat bar that Maureen has been looking into the idea of maker spaces. Maureen, it really is something. It really is special. All right, so that's what Eric and his wife did. They put in 13 maker spaces, rented them like that. And I think they boosted their income by about $70,000 or $80,000 a year, which is quite a lot. And the value of their building went up, I think, $600,000 or $700,000. So these animations can really make it a difference, right? I mean, you guys know this, that if you're making 3%, you know, if you go to the bank and you make 1% on your money, it takes a long time to double at 1%. At 3%, you're doing a little better. But if you could get your cap rate up to 7 or 8% and you project that out over 20 years, and some of you are young enough, 40 years, that makes a huge difference. And if you get some ridiculous cap rate like 50%, well, you don't have to do any calculations. You're going to do really well. Anyway, so one of the reasons I got into coaching was real estate investment and business coaching was that a lot of Canadians and Americans are not doing very well as they get older. The average Canada pension plan payout in Canada was $690 a month. It's hard to live on $690 a month. And the Social Security in the United States is better, about $1,230 US a month, but still not easy to live on those kind of numbers. And then a lot of people, I think Sylvie's on the call and others, have told me that they're not super happy with the performance of their RRSPs, their tax-free savings accounts, their LIRAs. This is just a personal opinion. I hope I'm not offending anybody, but I think the financial planning industry is a disaster. I can't even say it in polite language. So at the beginning of the pandemic, I think it was February, March of 2020, I got asked, what would you do, Bruce, if you had an extra 40 grand? This was a client of mine who I was coaching at the time. And I said to him, well, there's some things that I really like that are simple, not too difficult to do. And it is an animation and it is a business model that I like. And I talked to him about perhaps what is a microsuite. A microsuite is really just the modern term for a studio apartment. And you can see this apartment here. It's about 300 to 350 square feet. You come in here, you've got a bedroom here. Not really bedroom, but anyway, sleeping area here. You've got a full bathroom here. You've got a small kitchen here. You've got an entertainment and work area here. And hopefully you have some ingress and egress to the outside because, in a place like Ottawa, it's wintered about 11 months of the year. So having some access to the outside is really important. The other thing that even before the pandemic hit, roommates were going out of style, even long before. If you have roommates, if Denise, Stuart, and I are roommates, I come home and I said, Stuart, it's your turn to clean the bathroom. He said, no, I did it last week. It's your turn this week, Bruce. And then Denise comes home and says, who ate the last slice of pizza? And I look away and say, oh, not me. Of course I ate it. And so roommates argue, like within a few months, they hate each other and they move out. So microsuites are super hot, and it doesn't matter whether you're developing your portfolio in Shanghai or in Los Angeles or in Cochrane. This is a really, really cool thing. So these are my clients. They asked me to come out to their house. This is their house. It's a very nice house. It's in a small town in Ontario. I looked at it and I said, well, this is kind of interesting. This is Ken's and Natalie's place. And I want you guys to look at this this sort of wall here. This is a wall of glass, and there's a little bit of a balcony here. I want you to keep your eye on that because that's that glass wall here. If you see my cursor moving around, and this is a living room. And when I go into this house, it's really kind of complicated. It's on like a whole bunch of levels. And I said, Ken and Natalie, I think you have 2 living rooms. They said, oh, yeah, we do. This is the extra living room. I said, what do you need 2 living rooms for? He said, well, we hardly use it, And I said, okay. And this is a couple that were in their 50s and they were thinking about retiring and they realized that they might need some extra income from their house, right? So that's a picture taken by me this direction, and there's the picture taken by me in this direction. This turns out to be about a 330 square foot space. And I say to Ken and Natalie, I said, if you put up a little bit of drywall here, you can separate this from the house in a couple of days, and you're allowed to add a wet bar in the bathroom pretty much anywhere in your house, so you can get a building permit for it. And I said, you could turn this into a wonderful microsuite. And here's the picture. That's me and there. And there's Ken next to me in the reflection. And that's me taking a picture. And it already has its own ingress and egress to the outside, which is great. Because if you have a microsuite in your house, you don't really want your tenants walking in your front door, right? When you're kissing your wife. And it has this beautiful little porch already, right? Okay. So I said, well, this is a dandy little thing. So my wife and I have been doing this to a number of our properties. We put in a few microsuites, and it costs us about $40,000 to do it. So when we put in a microsuite, we furnish them. My wife furnishes them very nicely, and we pay basically retail prices. I'm a retail buyer, not when it comes to buying real estate, but when it comes to renovations. I have contractors doing it. I am a civil engineer, and I was a very handy guy when I was younger, but I don't have time to do it now. I like keynote speaking, and I like coaching, I like writing, and so I pay other people to do it. So it cost me 40 grand. And so I said to Ken and Natalie, it'll cost you about $40,000 by the time you've done all the things you need to do. Put the bathroom in, the micro kitchen in, do a little bit of drywall, some other stuff you need. And when we figured it out, they would end up with a 23.5% cap rate. So I want you guys to think about that, okay? Skill testing question. What's better, putting your $40,000 in your savings account and getting, say, 2%, which is $800 a year, or putting it into a microsuite and getting 23.5%. Last time I checked, 23.5 was better. But then Ken they called me up like a few months later, maybe it was a year later, I don't remember. And because Ken is handy and he has the time, and his I think his brother-in-law is also handy. They spent, I think, about $16,000 or $17,000 doing their microsuite instead of 40. And Natalie bought furniture from estate sales. Today you can get from, grandma's passed away, and you could get an entire house of people will pay you to take grandma's furniture away because they want to sell the house, right? And so I think she paid for, maybe she furnished it for $500. Yes, ma'am. Yes, Denise. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, Jeff had put a note in the chat. Are you doing a full fire separation for these micro suites?
Yes, we do.
And so they qualify as legal secondary dwellings then?
No. In his case, he already had, believe it or not, room for a 1-bedroom suite in the basement, which would be all that he is allowed, all right? So he's not allowed 3 units. So this is what's considered an in-law suite as opposed to a separate legal suite, still with a building permit. So the wet bar or the little micro kitchen and the bathroom and the fire separation is done, solid core doors and everything else, but it is still part of the main house. So that door, you remember I showed the separation, Stuart, between A and B, the living room and the rest of the house. There's still a door there. And so the tenant, or yes, the tenant in the micro suite, in theory, could walk through that door into the main house. Now, after completion and occupancy permit, somehow or other, that door, which is just an ordinary solid core door, it's a solid core door, so it is fire separated, but it doesn't have a lock set on it. Afterwards, maybe it does have a lock set, but I don't ask that question.
Fair enough.
All right. So he really does have 3 units, but please don't anybody say that.
It's those little leprechauns that sneak in there and change.
Yeah. The leprechauns made the change on the lock set. Yeah, that's right. Sylvia, you asked, what do they use it for? Makerspaces. Makerspaces are any number of gigs. It could be a registered massage therapist, a physiotherapist, an energy healer. In one of my buildings, I've got an electric catamaran builder, a welder, a carpenter, another boat builder. I got a dog trainer in one of mine. They train dog obedience. It's pretty important. There's just no limit to the number of gigs out there. I could spend all day and describe you what they are. Here's another animation that we do a lot. Just checking the time. I don't want to keep you guys too long. And we add to all of our, Denise and Stuart, what time are we supposed to be finished?
I think it's 10 o'clock tonight, Bruce.
No.
Generally around 11:45 would be great.
Well, okay. No, we've got till noon is what we told people.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you wanted me to finish up in 10 minutes.
No,
because I can talk really fast.
And this is great stuff. This is great stuff. Right? Don't take the meat out of the sandwich, just for us.
All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody. I hope you'll stick around. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So about 7 or 8 years ago, we started adding tech packages in everything. Duplexes, triplexes, 10plexes, industrial buildings, you name it. And we do a lot with technology now. And initially, we got a little bit of pushback because we charge for this. This is a profit center for us. We started a company called AdSmart Tech. It's run by Abe DeHavey. He's the one of the co-founders along with me. And we put we put tech packages into all kinds of buildings, commercial, industrial, residential, you name it. And initially we got a little bit of pushback. You know, a tenant would say, oh, you mean I'm signing a lease, I have to pay for your tech package? And we said, yeah, you come in, and the moment you come in, large screen TVs are on the wall, they stay there. Internet works, you got all the music that you'd ever want, all the different, you know, channels like HBO and Showtime and Netflix and Prime Video. It's really good. And we put in keypad locks. You know, if you have 350 doors and you have to keep keys to everything, no thanks. So we have keypad locks everywhere, and Nest thermostats that you can program with your phone. You know, so if somebody's hot or cold, you or your property manager don't actually have to go over there to fool with the temperature. So we put all these tech packages in. It's a very profitable part of our landlording business. And like I said, we got a little bit of pushback initially. Well, we can just go to AT&T or Verizon or Rogers or Bell or Telus and get the service. But after a few months of this, tenants realized, wait a second here. I'm getting the services from my landlord for about the same price I pay. And the moment I take occupancy of that unit, right, everything works. And it became a huge competitive advantage for us. It really did. And I remember I did one lease myself with a very nice lady. She was moving, I think, from Peterborough to one of our units. And I asked her why she chose this particular unit. And this was when Game of Thrones was like huge, right? And it turned out she was a Game of Thrones addict. That's the only way I can describe it. And she said, I can't miss an episode, you know. And you know, I realized and our places are a little bit more expensive. When I rent here, everything works, because I don't have to tell anybody on this call how many calls it takes to Rogers to get everything working properly. And we put in Google Mesh systems. The Wi-Fi is fantastic. And then the pandemic hit, and people were writing me and saying, oh my gosh, this is really saving my bacon. So I would strongly advise you to at least consider this. That's another animation. One of the things that I was surprised about, Denise and Stuart, when I started my coaching practice, I'll be honest, I thought about 90% of my clients would be male and maybe 10% would be female, but that has not been the case. It's about 40% female, and lots of young women and middle-aged women have come for some coaching, and I wondered why. And when I talked to them, I realized that young women and women of all ages have realized that by the time they're in their 50s, 60s, or 70s, 80s, they're probably on their own. And that's because all the men are dead. And they realize that they have to support themselves and their children and their grandchildren. So they're looking to do that. And like so many others, they're not happy with their mutual funds or RSPs or whatever else. They're just not performing well. So this is Lynn. She is exactly that. She was in her late 30s when she came to me. And she created a little animation of her own. What I was teaching back then, this was a few years ago, was, you know, if you bought a house, you put a basement apartment, a legal basement apartment in. And she said, but Bruce, you also like these microsuite things. And so what she started to do was she started to develop, instead of having a 2-bedroom or 3-bedroom, you know, basement apartment, she'd have 2 microsuites down there. And she got, you know, her rents were much, much better. And again, there's some sophistication in how you finesse the building permit. So if you're interested in knowing how she got building permits to put 2 microsuites in each basement, you'll have to circle back to me. But the results have been terrific. She's been doing this. That is her business model. She doesn't have, you know, any room. She only has studio apartments, and it's worked really well for her. I wanted to show you this one here. I have clients in Porto in Portugal. That's in northern part of Portugal, and this woman, a single mom as well, was wondering what to do with her property there. And I said, you know, I have a feeling that glamping is going to be something big. This is a few years ago now, and maybe even urban glamping. What the hell is urban glamping? Well, I said, just a term I came up with. So let's see what happens. So this is actually not Porto, this is Ottawa. And this is a neighbor of mine who had fallen on hard times. And I was sitting there with him and just doing some free coaching, just because he's a neighbor. And I was sitting there and he was asking me, how do I support myself? He had just lost his mom. He was living in this big house by himself. And he has a swimming pool, which I see as a money sucker and an energy sucker and a negative property valuation. That is not an animation. If there's such a thing as a de-animation, that's it, in my opinion. So we're sitting there, having a glass of wine. I'm looking at his situation and looking at this energy sucker, chemical, sewer, money sucker, and listening to his sad tale. His tech businesses are not doing very well. He was in his 40s. And if you know anything about tech, by the time you're 40, you're considered old and they're pushing you out the door. And apparently in China, by the time you're 30, you're considered old, right? They're pushing you out the door. They get somebody younger and cheaper. So I asked him, what are your interests? What's your why? Mark Twain said it better than I'll ever say it. The two most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why. And so I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm not really much. My tech businesses are terrible. They lose money, which is bad. But I'm really interested in energy healing. Well, have you done some courses? He said, yes, I'm qualified to do energy healing. I didn't know what that was, but he explained it to me. So I said, why don't you take out this horrible piece of garbage here, this swimming pool, there he is on his backyard, and replace it with a glamping tent in your backyard. It's a nice backyard, beautiful trees. It's got this, brick fence around, so quite private. And, when I go places, I hate hotels. I don't know about you guys. I just hate hotels. I'd rather stay in a cabin. I'd rather ride horses. Denise shakes her head. No, but that's everybody different. I like camping, and I like glamping, and I like horseback riding, and I even can surf, by the way, having lived in Australia for many years. I'm not very good at it anymore, but that's okay. So anyway, I said, well, you could put a glamping tent in your backyard, and people could come and pay you money, and then you could offer them energy healing, maybe for free. And they pay for this and get free energy healing, or charge them something for it. And then I said to him, wait, I got a better idea. One of my former architecture students, her name is Denise Zato. She manufactures yurts. It's called Yurta, I think yurta.ca. She manufactures beautiful, beautiful yurts that are good down to -40. I said, put one of these there. Instead of having a 113-day season, you'll have a 364-day season, right? Maybe you take Christmas off. And he said, oh, I like that idea. So I really believe in urban glamping. And so, here's Rebecca. So Rebecca, say hi. There she is. Wave hi, come on, let everybody see you. And there's Jordan. Rebecca and Jordan have 4 beautiful kids. And I wanted to mention to you, Denise and Stuart, that this is a project that I think they're going to come back to you and talk to you about and get some advice from you guys on. This is a mall that they have, I think, at least 1, if not 2 stores in. 2 stores, Rebecca? You have 2 locations in there? You have 2 stores in there. And they'd like to buy it, okay? And we're working through that, all right? But Rebecca and Jordan are very good students, I might say, and they believe in animation. So Rebecca, on her own, I did not prompt it. And when I saw her slide deck, I think I just stole this from Rebecca's slide deck. When I saw her slide deck, I just about fell off my chair. She'd like to put urban glamping on the roof of this mall. Isn't that something? And when I saw that, I just burst out laughing. I immediately emailed her and said, oh, that is a really interesting idea. So up on the top of this roof is huge. You could have urban glamping. You could have, what I call a playland. Maybe you could do some bocce or whatever up there that you want. And what I wanted to say to you is the most important thing maybe that you'll learn from me today is, again, this acronym, CMRR. It's really a tech acronym, but it's just as important in real estate as it is in tech, committed monthly recurring revenues. So imagine if Rebecca and Jordan could find a pub who wanted to open in their mall when and if they are able to buy it. And the pub owner would have his or her pub, they'd have a sidewalk patio, they'd have a rooftop patio, they'd have rooftop glamping and a playland up there. Can you imagine the committed monthly recurring revenues that the mall owner would get from that? It's very significant change in the cap rate for this mall, and a wonderful animation. Imagine being able to go to the pub and instead of having to maybe walk home a little wobbly, you just crash in your glamping tent on the rooftop. Isn't that something? So that's a model that we're working through. Now, the nice thing about this mall as we work through it is that probably Rebecca and Jordan could buy it at about a 10% cap rate. So way above the 6% that I said as a minimum. And by the time they finish animating it, it could be quite a bit higher. It could be 15%. And it wouldn't surprise me if it went even higher than that. So it's a pretty exciting project for these two young people. All right, I want to talk about, and I'm getting through this, I want to talk about going from one type of model to another. I don't really like the motel and hotel industry all that much. For somebody like me who's really interested in committed monthly recurring revenues, running a hotel or motel, or for that matter, an Airbnb is really not my cup of tea. I've said it many times, when my wife runs off with a younger man, any of our Airbnb units would come off the Airbnb platform in about 24 hours, and I just rent them out in the medium term and long-term rental market. Because I want to do coaching and writing and research. I don't really want to be answering questions at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night. How do I connect to Netflix? Right? It's just not my deal. So clients of mine last year were asking me about this kind of concept. Many of my clients, or quite a few of them, own motels and hotels, and you can imagine what it was like in 2020 when one of my clients owns I think 600 rooms in 6 hotels in 6 different towns, so about 100 rooms per hotel. I think he was at a 5% occupancy rate. So if you had a 100-unit apartment building and you had 95 of your units empty, that would be a pretty bad situation. So it was really, really tough last year. So what I suggested to him, and he did do it, was why don't you pivot away from the short-term rental market? And because a lot of his units had the microsuite already set up. They had not only the bedroom area, but the micro kitchen, the work area, the balcony, whatever. And you could rent them on the medium-term and long-term basis. And they said, "Ooh, that might work." And it did. He got to about a 60 or 65% occupancy last year, with almost all of that coming from medium-term and long-term rentals. And then once he got into it and he realized he had shifted from a one-to-many problem to a one-to-a-few problem. What does that mean? That's another very fundamental factor in business efficiency. If you're running a hotel that has 100 rooms, in theory, you have to make 36,000 sales that year to fill 100 rooms, right? I don't know if I got that right, but 365 days times 100, I think it's 36,000 and change, right? So you have to make 36,000 sales to fill up your 100-room hotel for that year. But if you have them all on the long-term rental market, and by the way, I don't do any residential leases that are less than 2 years, reduces the workload. So you have 100 rooms, and say the average tenant stays 2 years, hopefully longer, but say they stay 2 years. It means you have to do 50 deals a year. So you've reduced the one-to-many, the 1 to 36,000 to 1 to 50 problem, much more manageable. And you need a lot less staff, and there's a lot less stress. And so anyway, so lo and behold, my clients last year went friggin' on a tear buying up these motels in the United States. And I wanted to show you this one. This is just unbelievable. This one is a 52-room hotel in Florida, available for 100 grand. And I like the motel as opposed to the hotel because, again, they're micro suites, right? They're perfect. You have individual access. So again, you don't have to go through a hotel lobby and go up an elevator. Maybe you get sick doing that. And so one of my clients bought this thing for $100,000, right? And converted it to medium-term and long-term rentals. Very, very successful. And here's just a few more pictures of this place. All right, I wanted to show you this model, and Nick Foley, this is one I like for you in Belleville because you know it is. I'm very fond of Belleville, as you know, and because it's right next to Prince Edward County, I thought there might be a piece of dirt you could buy in the area and do the cabin in the woods business model. But other people can do it too, in Cochrane, Alberta, and Calgary, and all the other really cool places. I'm doing one here in Ottawa, and here's the model. Okay, you guys ready? I'm just trying to see what I wrote. Buy a cheapo piece of dirt, add zero impact glamping bunkie, put on Airbnb or vacation rental by owner, generate 23.7% cap rate, see increase in value of $161,000 in 6 to 18 months. So this is how to make $161,000 increase in value in 18 months. All right, that's all I'm going to say about it. I'm kidding. You know, because I'm a prof, I can't resist, you know, expanding on everything. I got to drill down a little bit further, but I call it the cabin in the woods model. I'm going to see if this animation works. It's a 21 second. Oops, shoot, I screwed up. Sorry, guys. I got to stop. So this is a 21 second animation. I got to start it again. So this is a little cabin in the woods that I'm building as we speak. And again, I think, yes, Denise and Stuart, you helped me with this one too. So here, I'll show it to you. Okay, 21 seconds. There you go. I should have put some, you know, music to it, but sorry, that's beyond my skill set. So this is a piece of dirt that I bought. It has an old cabin on it here, has an old pond here, and here's the sign, cabin in the woods. Oh, hang on a second. I actually have it here because we had to take it off the cabin, but we're gonna, you know, recycle it and put it back up. And so what this is it's a wonderful little cabin. It'll have its own micro kitchen in there. It'll have its own living room and sort of dining room area. It'll have its, if you know what a composting toilet is, it'll have a composting toilet, it'll have electricity, it'll have internet. And we haven't finished it. All we've done is we've done the prep for it. I've had 30 inquiries to lease this thing. I don't think we're going to lease it on a long-term basis. I think my wife is going to put it on Airbnb. But again, if it was up to me, I would just lease it out. But you know, Dawn's a mother and a grandmother, and she doesn't mind the extra work. So it's a beautiful little a piece of land. And the reason we got it so cheap was because nobody else wanted it, because it is subject to floodplain and wetlands, right? So that's why it has to be a zero impact cabin. Just so you know, I added largemouth bass here. I call them, and all the ponds and lakes in the area which I own. I've added largemouth bass. I call them my Lady Di fish. And the reason I call them my Lady Di fish is I seeded the ponds and the lake on the day that Lady Di died. So that's my story about Lady Di. There's a composting toilet. It's sitting in my garage right now, waiting for our contractor to need it and install it. We use a gray water system, so there's no septic here. It's just a gray water system. You know, I really believe in families that play together, stay together, right? Couples that play together, stay together. So you can be sure we're going to add lots of different games, you know, cornhole and outdoor ping pong and volleyball, pickleball. We'll definitely add a pickleball court. You know, probably add a barrel sauna. I don't really like what do they call those, hot tubs? Because, you know, I don't really want to get in a hot tub that 30 other people have just gotten out of. So we use barrel saunas that we can clean really well between users. So that we prefer that. We're going to add a council ring because I like camping and I like having campfires and playing guitars and banjos and harmonicas, and that's an experience. So one of the things that I think people are really hungry for, and this was before the pandemic, but it's really accentuated now, and especially young people, but also people my age and even older. What people want today are experiences, and we're going to give it to them. All right, I think I have some numbers here. Yeah, my little bunkie is going to cost me 90 grand. We're going to put it on Airbnb or vacation rental by owner, probably Airbnb. It'll generate about a 23% cap rate, which is very good, and will drive the value of this place up from 90,000 to about 250,000 bucks. It'd take about a year to do all of this and rent stabilize it. Now, here's the thing, though, guys. What if I were to add a second, third, or even a fourth bunkie on the property? Imagine what the cap rate would look like, what the value would look like. Now, legally, in this particular property, I'm only allowed 2, right? So I can have 2. I can't have 10. If you want to have 10, you probably have to have commercial tourism zoning, all right? We just have rural zoning, and then we have, so we have RR3, rural residential 3 zoning, and then we have wetlands and floodplain, right? So we can get 2, but not 10, right? Or not 4. But if you had some property, if you bought some piece of dirt that had commercial tourism zoning, go to town on it. And I think Brad Cartier out in Hammond, which is a small town in Ontario, is doing exactly that. I think he has 50 acres of commercial tourism, and I think he's going to put 20 or more of these things on there. You can imagine what the ROI looks like. So anyway, Nick, I was thinking of you in Belleville maybe doing something like this. And I got all the plans if you want them, by the way. All right, something else that Denise and Stuart asked me to talk about today, and I'm keeping my eye on the time, is I call this gigaplexing and augmented tenancy. And don't bother about Googling augmented tenancies or gigaplexing. Those are just terms I made up. What is an augmented tenancy? Well, let's look at this. Okay, so this is the design of an apartment in White Rock, BC. Oh, here's the building. So this is a building that a client of mine in White Rock, BC is building. The first 2 floors are commercial. The next 3 floors are all done with augmented tenancy. And then the top floor is a penthouse. And so this is what these things look like, okay? This is what an augmented tenancy is. And this is a really important animation, guys. So what it is you've got a 2-bedroom apartment here. So this is, if you follow my cursor, this is where the corridor is, and here's the entrance. You come in here, and you've got a bathroom here, a little work area here, bedroom here, kitchen here, dining area, entertainment area, and access to the balcony. And over on the left-hand side in the blue, you have another bedroom. What's the difference? Here's the difference. This bedroom is a self-contained lock-off suite, that's what they call microsuites out in BC. BC is always different, right? It's called the left coast for a reason. So here is a microsuite or a lock-off suite with its own ingress and egress to the corridor. And what's interesting about it is that it has a connecting door to the main apartment. And here's how it works. So maybe this elderly lady rents this apartment from Denise and Stuart. Maybe she rents it for 2,500 bucks, right? And she decides to rent the microsuite to a personal support worker, maybe a younger person like this young woman here. And that young woman can have affordable housing in a very expensive part of Canada. And she has, basically a job right next door. She can provide services. But here's the interesting part of this whole thing. Maybe we could reverse that. Maybe this young woman rents this from Denise and Stuart for 2,500 bucks. And she lives in the microsuite, and she's the one who brings in the elder. Now, if you know anything about retirement residences, vertical warehouses where old people go to die, that they are very expensive. And I have to tell you, even before the pandemic, I hated them. And then during the pandemic and after the pandemic, I hate them even more. I think this is a better model. So this young woman rents this from Denise and Stuart for 2,500 bucks. She lives in her own little microsuite, and she rents this to an elder. In White Rock, BC, it's between $5,500 and $7,500 a month to go into one of those horrible retirement residences. Instead, you come in here for maybe $3,500 a month. It means that this young woman could, in fact, live at a negative cost in her own apartment in a very expensive town. And there's a million different riffs on this. You know, maybe I could live here as an older fellow in White Rock, BC, and I could rent this on Airbnb, which in White Rock is very popular. It's a $200 to $300 a night Airbnb, because, you know, White Rock, BC has a lot better weather than, say, Ottawa does. So again, I could pay Denise and Stuart $2,500, rent this out for, say, $200 a night. Now I've got $4,000 in income, and I'm living in my own apartment for a negative amount of money. That's an augmented tenancy, and I call it a gigaplex. Right? And the other thing that I would suggest, if you're the landlord, is think about this. You can rent, basically, imagine if you had a whole building like this and you put an ad on Kijiji, anybody want a free apartment, how many people would show up, right? A lot. But here's what's neat, is Denise and Stuart are charging $2,500 for this apartment, but they are also asking for a percentage of this young woman's or my revenues, right? It's called a percentage rent, perfectly legal, perfectly normal. It's a commercial concept, but I brought it to the residential area. Right? So, you know, Denise could say, Bruce, you're renting this for $2,500, but we want a third of your Airbnb revenues. And what's even nicer for Denise and Stuart is now they don't have to do any work, because Airbnb is a lot of work. I'm doing it. I'm the one booking it. I'm the one cleaning it, right? Okay. It's a very powerful concept. I'm not going to go there. All right. All right. This is, I think, the last model I can do today, because I'll get yanked off here in a minute. What is the future of retail space? I've given that a lot of thought, because we, in addition to buying that house, you know, that triplex really in Belleville, we bought a building on Front Street, which is the main street in Belleville, which has, you know, 12,000 square feet, some commercial at grade and some apartments above. So I've given a lot of thought to what is the future of retail. And it must be any retail. The test I put to it is it must be internet resistant, it must be pandemic resistant, it must be big box resistant. So if somebody comes along and says, hey, I'd like to rent you know, commercial space on Front Street, and I'm going to put in a hardware store, I'm probably going to say no. Right? Because to compete with Lowe's and Home Depot, I think it's 9 minutes away. It's not a winning proposition. So here's the building on Front Street that we bought. This handsome fellow is me doing the building inspection. So my wife found this building advertised for sale. It was a power sale, and you guys all know what that is. It's like a foreclosure, only a little bit different. And so she found it on a Friday. Saturday, I went down to do the building inspection. That's me doing it. Went through the building, liked it, put in an offer on the Sunday with an irrevocable by noon the next day, which they accepted. So this is what the building used to look like in the 70s. You can tell by the cars here. It's really beautiful. So one of the first things we were doing as we bought this building is we're taking off that ugly steel facade and brick veneer, and we're going to reinstate the heritage look. But what I wanted to show you, and again, this is the last model I can do today, but for you, Jordan and Rebecca, very important that you understand these are the tests that if you do get a hold of this mall, these are the tests that you have to apply to anybody who wants to work with you in the mall. If they're not internet resistant, pandemic resistant, and big box store resistant, you probably can't rent to them. Okay. So what did I do? This is part of the ground floor, which you can see the plan here on the right-hand side of my screen. We just did a deal last week, actually, to put a business incubator in here. So this will be a startup factory. So there'll be student entrepreneurs who will be here. And what's really cool is we are likely to get approval from the city of Belleville to add a microsuite here. So the combination is really interesting, where you could have a business incubator here. It's associated with a large institution, and you could have an entrepreneur in residence living on site and providing coaching and mentoring services. And you know, I was surprised that the amount of money that we'll get for this microsuite at grade. So you've got that live work situation that I talked about. That microsuite produces as much, or maybe even a little bit more, income per square foot as the commercial space does. So there you go. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now if I can figure out how to do that. Hang on, I think it's over here. So I know you're waving at me. I'm not going to go on any longer, but
No.
I wanted to say to everybody, thank you again for coming today and sticking with me as long as you did. And if there's any questions that you have, I'm going to put in the chat box myself, my email address, and you're more than welcome to reach out to me by email. Sorry, Denise, over to you.
There were a couple of questions, Bruce, and
Sure.
I want to go back to them. Ashley had asked, when we were talking about maker spaces,
Yes.
or workshops, do we have to worry about commercial zoning requirements?
Now that's a really good question. I'm just putting in my email address, just so everybody knows, like most men, I can only do one thing at a time. So anyway, so there's my email address. Like I said, reach out to me anytime. I love doing this keynote speaking thing. I love doing the coaching thing, and you can reach out to me. So different cities have different rules. So in a city like Long Beach, California, you are allowed to have a house, for example, and a workshop, as long as the tenant here is the tenant here. So work from home, in-home businesses are legal in most cities and towns. What you are not allowed to do in most cities and towns is have a house here and a workshop here and rent to some random person. All right, so that is a concern. Now, maybe your first go around, Stuart, is, oh yeah, Bill has rented the house or the apartment, and he has rented the workshop, but maybe Bill goes away and somehow or other that gets lost in the mix, if you know what I mean. Because I do know I have a lot of clients who have this model. It's a wonderful model. They've implemented it. One of my clients has 60 properties. He's got probably 50 workshops. I suspect after the first or second tenant, he's forgotten all about who's where, if you understand what I mean.
Absolutely. Patricia had asked a question about building insurance where you've got variable tenant uses.
I wish you hadn't asked that question. I just went through that over the last 3 or 4 days with that Belleville property, the W Street Belleville property that I went through. Insurance is becoming very complicated. When they looked at the plans for 140 W Street and what we're doing with it, where we're having different uses, tenancies, and I mean that backyard, that 2-bedroom Airbnb could easily be a 2-office business there, which is legal as long as the tenant in the house is the tenant in the backyard. But explaining that to the underwriters is not easy, and you need a really good insurance broker. I use an insurance broker in a small town. She is amazing. She's gotten me insurance on properties, Stuart, that are incredibly difficult to insure. I mean, imagine, my barn dominium project that you helped me with, explaining that to an insurance, so you do need a great underwriter and a great broker.
Maybe you can just explain what a barn dominium is, because probably for many people, that's the first time they hear the word.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Denise. You put me in the soup again. So believe it or not, I own a barn. And this barn, well, I'll see if I can find a picture of it. This barn was actually on another property, and a developer that I know was going to knock it down. And I said, oh, it's such a beautiful, beautiful structure. Could you not, maybe take it down? And I'm just seeing if I got a picture of it. Oh, yeah, I do. Here we are. It's just such a beautiful structure. And I'll share my screen with you one more time. So let's share this screen. So here's the barn dominium. So this is an old Amish style barn that was actually on John Galetta's property about 12 kilometers away, and he was going to knock it down. I thought it's such a beautiful structure. What a shame to junk it. So I said, would you mind? This is about 25 years ago. Would you mind if I came and took it apart piece by piece? I'm going to number and letter everything. He said, are you crazy? I said, well, yeah, some people think so. And I'm going to rebuild it on my property, which I did. And so I rebuilt it here. And for 20 years, Denise and Stuart, it was just a playpen for my kids. You know, we had a big screen TV in there. We watched Blue Jays games and everything else. But kids grow up and go away. So about 15 or 16 months ago, I had this brainwave. I got to turn it into a house. And that turned out to be way too expensive and too difficult. So, okay, that didn't work. And then I said, oh, wait a second, I'm a coach. I'm going to turn it into an event center so I can have 50 or 60 people come here and I'll coach them live. And then the pandemic hit and nobody wanted to see me in person. So then the next, what was it? Oh, then I was just going to turn it into a storage building, but there's way too many people in the storage business, no demand for that. So then I remembered, hey, I've been teaching other people to turn it into workshops. I turned it into workshops and oh my God, we've got every square foot here is filled up. Do you need a special zoning for that? In this case, yes, I do. I did the zoning for this. It has commercial and residential zoning. I did that 25 years ago.
And you've actually got it filled with all kinds of different people in there now, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Unbelievable number of different people in there. And if I were to take you guys there, it's become this wonderful community of makers, shapers, everything except bakers.
Somebody asked about makerspace insurance. Again, an insurance question. What kind of insurance would you have to have for these makerspace areas?
Well, we have a loft in this building, and I can't tell you the number of people said, hey, can I live in the loft? The answer to that is no. And the reason for that is that there is a much higher risk of accident when you have maker spaces and workshops. There is. If you have we have a welder in there, and if he makes a mistake, that can be really dangerous. So there's no way I would let anybody live in that building in the loft. That's in fact where the dog training group is. They take their dogs up there and they train them, which is really cool. So you need to have a great insurance broker and an understanding underwriter. Otherwise, it'll cost you a fortune. So the first few quotes I got on this, Denise, for insurance, everybody knows on the barn dominium, it's $2,000 a month. I think it was $2,200 a month. And I said, holy smokes, I only make $6,000 a month. The folks who I have as my brokers, my insurance brokers, said, well, this is unacceptable. And they searched the market and they explained it properly. Now it's about $2,200 for the year.
A little difference.
A little different. That was literally 1/12 of what we were at before.
I mean, that's such a big lesson too, is that just because you're used to going to an insurance broker does not mean that they're the only people that can actually assess what it is that you have. As long as you can explain it properly, then, shop for the best rates. That's for sure. Yeah. You know what? This has been absolutely wonderful, Bruce. I thank you so much. And for me, it's like mind blown. I wish I had like an explosion that I could have had on the screen, because I think when you look at what people tend to do is they do the buy, rent, and hold, or they do the secondary dwelling units, or they do the flips. Those are sort of the more common things. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much more out there that I could be doing to animate these buildings, or to actually bring in a different type of, method, or I'm losing the right word that I'm actually trying to say here, but a different way to actually make money from real estate. And I think you've just opened up people's minds as to possibilities that are out there. And I'm just curious, does anybody actually use some of these methods already, even if it's just one? Is anybody using any of those methods right now?
I'll bet you have some people doing this stuff. I mean, as I said to you, Rebecca and Jordan came up with the rooftop glamping without my prompting them. So like I said, good ideas come from everywhere. I learn almost as much from the people I coach as they do from me. Can I just say, I'd like to give away a couple of things, Denise, before we end?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So there were a couple of things I wanted to give everybody, if you want, and I'll make sure that Denise and Stuart have that. So I wrote this book called Don't Back Down for the 25th anniversary of the founding of the centers, and no funny comments about how young I look in this picture and how old I look today. Okay, I was in my 30s and I'm close to 70 now, so no comments, please. You might say it's a hockey book. Yeah, I'm not that interested, but there's 4 themes in there. One, it is about the Ottawa Senators and their founding. It is about the National Hockey League. So yes, that's true. It's about big league sports, but there's a lot of real estate in here, a lot. And you'll see how I applied a lot of the techniques I've been talking about to this particular project. So that's the 3rd theme, real estate. And the 4th one is I wanted to put in there my own personal story of what it takes to be an entrepreneur and what makes an entrepreneur tick. All right. So my wife said, don't put that in. Nobody will be interested. But it turned out that people did like the 4th theme and they did want to hear a little bit of the personal history. So if you want that, it's a free e-copy. Denise and Stuart will have that in a few minutes. The other one, which is maybe even more relevant to this audience, is business model illustrations. It's very short. The first book is a little bit longer, but this one is only 67 pages. It has 3 business case studies in it and 7 real estate ones. And I think it'll really help you guys. It's business model illustrations, real estate investment, and personal business for life, mini case studies. It's only 67 pages long, so the average case study is only 5 or 6 pages, and it won't take you very long to read it. The last thing I'm going to say to you is something else I did. I don't know if I've talked to you very much about it, Denise and Stuart, but this is the last thing. Last year, about a year ago now, I started something called Burning Rock Solutions. And some people on the call are already subscribers. This is my private newsletter. It comes out once a month, 10 times a year. There is a cost to it, but the neat thing about Burning Rock Solutions is if you're interested in subscribing, it is like a 3rd and 4th year university education in real estate and business. It really is. And if you subscribe to it, you get all the back copies, and you get, of course, a year's worth. But more importantly, maybe in some ways, it includes 2 coaching sessions with me for a grand total of $800 for the year, plus HSD. So if anybody wants Burning Rock Solutions, like I said, you get 2 coaching sessions with me, one-on-one, or you can add a +1, so it could be your spouse or your business partner. And I did this, Denise, because not everybody can afford monthly one-on-one coaching with me. So I created this to give more people access.
That's absolutely wonderful. That I did not know about, Bruce. That's great. So you've got Bruce's email on there, but as I had mentioned when we sent out the invite, everybody who attended today, you will get an email. You will get the links that Bruce had on there. You will get the 2 books. So everybody that's on here, you will get it. And if you don't get it within a day or 2, please write to us just at info@sdmacproperties.com, and we'll make sure you get it. But we have everybody's address, or not address, but names here. And I went through and checked to see who was live on the call. So again, Bruce, thank you so much.
It's been great. As Ashley made the comment here, and I agree with it. What an amazing start to a Saturday. So energized.
Well, I love the music, and I love doing this. And again, people put up with me for an hour and a half. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you, everyone.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks again, Bruce, and have a great weekend, everyone.